Officers, I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Army. Please, let me explain. Officer Derek Hollister slammed Adrian Porter against the wall. The soldier's medals clanged against the concrete. The sound echoed through the busy terminal. Shut your mouth! Hollister's spit landed on Adrian's cheek. Another black criminal playing dress-up. You people disgrace that uniform. A white businessman nearby clapped slowly. His gold watch glinted under the fluorescent lights. About time someone put them in their place. Others nodded in agreement. A mother pulled her child closer, away from the black man in uniform, not the violent cop attacking him. Adrian's phone sat in his pocket. One call, that's all he needed. But Hollister didn't know about that phone. He didn't know whose voice would come through the speaker. He didn't know that in 5 minutes, a 4-star general would make him wish he'd never put on a badge. And he definitely didn't know that by the end of this day, he would be the one in handcuffs. 6 hours earlier, the morning sun painted the Atlanta skyline in brilliant shades of gold and soft pink. Staff Sergeant Adrian Porter stepped off the military transport van at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. The autumn air carried the familiar smell of jet fuel mixed with fresh coffee from nearby kiosks. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs completely. American soil. Finally, home. 14 months. That's how long he'd been gone. 14 months of relentless desert heat, sleepless nights filled with distant explosions, and the constant echo of gunfire that haunted his dreams. 3 combat tours across 2 continents. He'd watched friends die in his arms. He'd carried wounded brothers through burning wreckage while bullets whizzed past his head. He'd earned every single ribbon on his chest with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. But today, none of that mattered. Today, he was just a son going home to see his mother. Adrian adjusted his Army service uniform carefully. The fabric was crisp and freshly pressed. His bronze star caught the morning light, gleaming like a small sun on his chest. His Purple Heart sat beside it, a permanent reminder of the shrapnel still lodged dangerously close to his spine. He grabbed his olive green duffel bag and shook the driver's hand firmly. "Thank you, brother. Safe travels to you." The driver smiled warmly. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant. Go see your mama. Give her a hug from all of us." Adrian nodded, emotion tightening his throat. His mother, Diane Porter, 60 years old last month, and dying. The doctors had called 3 weeks ago with devastating news. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Maybe 2 months left, maybe less. The words had hit Adrian like a bullet to the chest. He'd begged General Thornton for emergency leave that same night. The general had approved it within hours. "Go home, son," Thornton had said, his voice unusually soft. "That's an order. Family comes first. Always." Now Adrian had 72 hours. 72 precious hours to hold his mother's hand, to tell her he loved her one more time, to say goodbye properly, the way she deserved. He walked through the automatic doors into the bustling terminal. The airport hummed with life. Businessmen in expensive suits rushed toward their gates, phones pressed to ears. Families embraced tearfully at arrivals. Children pressed their small faces against windows, watching planes take off into the endless blue sky. American flags hung proudly from every pillar. Red, white, and blue banners proclaimed, "Welcome home, heroes." The irony of those words would hit him later. Hard. Adrian moved through the crowded terminal with the quiet confidence of a seasoned soldier. His posture was ramrod straight. His steps were measured and purposeful. People noticed him immediately. Some nodded respectfully at his uniform. Others whispered admiringly to their companions. An elderly white man in a faded Vietnam veteran cap stopped directly in his path. The old soldier's weathered face studied Adrian's ribbons for a long moment. Then he raised his trembling hand in a crisp military salute. Adrian returned it with precision. "Thank you for your service, sir." The veteran's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "No, son. Thank you for continuing what we started. Thank you for yours." They shook hands firmly. 2 generations of American warriors connected across time by shared sacrifice. Adrian felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was why he served. This connection. This brotherhood. A few steps later, a young black boy tugged excitedly at his mother's arm. His eyes were wide with pure wonder and admiration. "Mommy, look! A real soldier, like in the movies!" Adrian smiled genuinely and gave the boy a thumbs up. The child's face lit up like Christmas morning. He bounced up and down with joy. These moments, these small, precious connections. This is what he'd fought for. He stopped at a coffee kiosk near Gate B12. The barista was a young white woman with a friendly, open smile. "What can I get you today, sir?" "Black coffee, please. Large, strong." She prepared his order with care. When he reached for his wallet, she shook her head firmly. "It's on the house, Sergeant. Thank you for protecting all of us." Adrian insisted on leaving a $10 tip anyway. She tried to refuse. He placed it on the counter with a gentle smile. "For your kindness," he said softly. "It means more than you know." His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text message from General Thornton. "Safe landing, Sergeant. Call me when you're stateside. Give your mother my warmest regards." Adrian typed back quickly. "Yes, sir. Good to be home. Thank you for everything." He checked his watch. 2 hours until his connecting flight to D.C., then a rental car to his mother's house in Virginia. He'd arrive by evening. He'd surprise her with the flowers she loved. Yellow roses, just like the ones his father used to bring her every anniversary. Adrian sipped his coffee slowly. The bitter warmth tasted like home. He passed the airport police substation without a second glance. Inside, Officer Derek Hollister sat with his feet propped arrogantly on the desk. His cold eyes tracked Adrian through the glass like a predator watching prey. Hollister muttered something to his partner, Kyle Brennan. Brennan's face tightened with visible discomfort. Adrian didn't notice. He was thinking about his mother, about yellow roses, about the precious 72 hours he had left with her. He had absolutely no idea that in 15 minutes, his entire world would shatter into pieces. Adrian walked toward Gate B17 with unhurried steps. His coffee steamed gently in his hand. His duffel bag hung comfortably over his shoulder. His mind was already in Virginia, already sitting beside his mother's bed, already holding her frail hand. He didn't hear the SUV creeping behind him. The airport police vehicle rolled slowly through the terminal corridor. Its engine hummed like a predator stalking unsuspecting prey. Officer Derek Hollister sat behind the wheel, his jaw set hard. His partner, Kyle Brennan, shifted nervously in the passenger seat. "That's him," Hollister said flatly. His voice was ice cold. Brennan squinted at the uniformed soldier ahead. "Him who?" "He's just a soldier, Derek. Looks legitimate to me." "He's just a black man in a costume." Hollister's thin lips curled into a sneer. "My airport. My rules. My call." He stopped the SUV abruptly and stepped out. His hand rested deliberately on his holster, a clear intimidation tactic. Brennan followed reluctantly, his face troubled. "Hey, you, stop right there," Adrian turned calmly. His expression showed mild confusion. He assumed there must be some simple misunderstanding. "Good morning, officers. Is there a problem I can help with?" Hollister approached with heavy, aggressive steps. He was 41 years old, 15 years on the force, a dozen serious complaints buried deep by union lawyers and departmental indifference. He'd never faced a single real consequence for any of them. "Where do you think you're going?" "Gate B17, sir. I have a connecting flight to D.C. in about 2 hours. Hollister circled him slowly, deliberately. His eyes crawled over Adrian's uniform like hungry insects examining prey. "We got a report. Someone matching your description. Suspicious activity in this terminal." Adrian's brow furrowed with genuine confusion. "Suspicious activity? Sir, I just landed about 20 minutes ago. I've been walking straight to my gate the entire time." "Are you arguing with me?" "No, sir. I'm simply explaining." "I didn't ask for any explanation." Hollister stepped closer, invading Adrian's personal space. His breath smelled like stale cigarettes and old coffee. "I asked if you were arguing with me." Brennan stood back several feet, clearly uncomfortable. His hand hovered uncertainly near his radio. His eyes darted between his aggressive partner and the growing crowd of curious onlookers. "Derek, maybe we should verify his credentials through military channels first. His uniform looks completely legitimate to me." Hollister didn't even bother turning around. "Did I ask for your opinion, Kyle?" "No, but I think—" "Then handle the crowd and keep your mouth shut. I'll handle this situation myself." Brennan retreated obediently. His face was pale and troubled. Something wasn't right here. He could feel it deep in his gut. Hollister extended his hand impatiently. "ID. Now, let's see it." Adrian reached slowly and deliberately into his pocket. He produced his official military identification card and boarding pass. Department of Defense verification codes were clearly visible. Irrefutable proof of his identity and service. Hollister snatched the documents roughly. He barely glanced at the detailed information printed there. Adrian Porter. He pronounced the name like it was something dirty and distasteful. "These could easily be fake. Wouldn't be the first time." "Sir, that's an official military ID with full DoD verification. You can easily confirm it by, I'll decide what's real and what's fake around here." Hollister tossed the ID dismissively on the ground. It clattered loudly against the polished tile floor. "I've seen your type plenty of times before. Steal a uniform from somewhere, pin on some shiny medals, then demand respect you never earned." The crowd had grown considerably now. Travelers stopped their hurried conversations mid-sentence. Phones emerged from pockets and purses. The air grew thick and heavy with mounting tension. A white businessman in an expensive tailored suit watched the scene with open amusement. His arms were crossed smugly. A slight, satisfied smile played on his thin lips. "Put your bag down immediately," Hollister ordered loudly. "Hands where I can see them, now!" Adrian complied slowly and carefully. He lowered his duffel bag gently to the floor. He raised his hands to shoulder height, palms open. Every movement was deliberate and controlled, the product of years of intense military discipline. "Sir, I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Army. I've completed 3 full combat tours overseas. If you'll just let me make one phone call to my commanding officer—" "You're not calling anyone." Hollister pointed accusingly at Adrian's chest, at the colorful ribbons, at the gleaming bronze star, at the purple heart that represented real wounds and real sacrifice. "What's all this hardware anyway? You steal these from a real soldier somewhere? Buy them at some military surplus store for $20? Gasps rippled audibly through the watching crowd. An elderly woman covered her mouth in shock. A young father instinctively pulled his small daughter protectively behind him. Adrian's voice remained remarkably steady despite the provocation. "I earned every single one of them, sir. 3 tours. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. I can provide complete documentation for each medal if you'll just—" Hollister laughed cruelly. The sound was ugly and mocking, designed to humiliate. "Documentation. Right." He turned dramatically to the crowd, playing shamelessly for his audience. "You hear that, folks? The criminal wants to show us his fancy paperwork." A few people chuckled nervously, uncomfortable with the situation but unsure how to respond. The businessman clapped his hands slowly, approvingly. "About time someone put them in their proper place." Adrian felt the words hit him like a physical punch to his gut. Them. Their place. the ancient language of segregation, the ugly vocabulary of hate and division. He'd fought for this country, bled for it on foreign soil, watched friends die for it. And now he stood in an American airport while white strangers laughed openly at his humiliation. Hollister grabbed Adrian's arm roughly. His grip was deliberately painful, designed specifically to provoke a reaction. Adrian's body tensed instinctively, but he forced himself not to pull away. He didn't resist. He'd been trained to handle far worse situations than this. "Oh, you want to resist now?" Hollister's voice rose theatrically. "That's assault on a police officer right there. I felt him resist." "I haven't moved at all, sir." "I said don't resist!" Hollister shoved Adrian violently against a concrete pillar. The impact sent his coffee flying through the air. Brown liquid splashed messily across the pristine tile floor. His metals rattled loudly against his chest from the force. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Even the smug businessman stopped smiling. An elderly white man pushed forward through the gathered onlookers. He wore a faded cap with Vietnam veteran stitched proudly across the front. The same man who had respectfully saluted Adrian just minutes earlier. "Officer, this man is wearing a Bronze Star. That's one of our military's highest honors. He's clearly served our country with distinction. You have absolutely no right to—" Hollister spun around menacingly. "Back off, Grandpa, unless you want to join him in the holding cell." The veteran's wife grabbed his arm desperately. Tears streamed down her weathered, wrinkled face. "Henry, please. Don't do this. They'll hurt you too. Please." The veteran retreated reluctantly, but his eyes stayed locked on Adrian's face. They were filled with deep shame, not for himself, for his country, for what America had become. A young black woman stood frozen at the edge of the crowd. Her hands trembled uncontrollably at her sides. Her jaw was clenched tight with suppressed rage. She wanted desperately to scream, to intervene, to do something. But she knew too well what happened to black people who dared challenge police officers. She'd seen the news stories. She knew the statistics. She knew the risks. She stayed silent. They all did. Every single one of them. Hollister pulled his radio from his belt with exaggerated authority. Static crackled through the busy terminal. "Dispatch, this is Hollister. Got a suspicious individual at B Concourse. Possible stolen valor. Possible fraud. Requesting immediate backup." Adrian spoke calmly despite everything. "Sir, if you would just let me make one phone call, just one. My commanding officer can verify everything in less than a minute. You're not calling anyone." Hollister smiled coldly. It didn't reach his dead eyes. "You're coming with us. Now." He grabbed Adrian's wrist roughly and twisted it behind his back. The pain was immediate and intense. Adrian's shoulder screamed in protest. But he didn't cry out. He didn't fight back. He recited his training silently in his mind. Name, rank, service number, stay calm, stay controlled. Don't give them any excuse. Staff Sergeant Adrian Porter, 442nd Infantry Regiment. Service number. "Save it for the judge, boy." Hollister pushed Adrian forward roughly, toward the police substation, away from his gate, away from his connecting flight, away from his dying mother waiting in Virginia. The crowd parted like the Red Sea before Moses. No one spoke a single word of protest. No one moved to help. They simply watched a decorated American soldier being dragged away like a common street criminal. The businessman in the expensive suit casually adjusted his silk tie and checked his gold watch. He had an important flight to catch. This wasn't his problem. The young mother held her daughter closer. She whispered something about bad people and staying safe from strangers. She was looking directly at Adrian when she said it. Brennan followed behind silently, carrying Adrian's abandoned duffel bag. He'd opened it without any permission or warrant, rifled carelessly through its personal contents, folded uniform shirts, perfectly pressed, dress socks, rolled into neat regulation balls, a worn leather Bible with gold-edged pages, family photographs in a weathered envelope. The American flag came out last, small and faded from years of service. Its fabric was soft from countless hours of handling. Adrian had carried this flag through 3 separate war zones. It had covered the casket of his best friend at Arlington. It had flown over a schoolhouse they'd rebuilt together in Afghanistan. Hollister picked it up carelessly with just 2 fingers, like it was garbage, like it meant nothing at all. Look at this pathetic thing, playing soldier with his little toy flag. He dropped it deliberately on the dirty floor. The sacred fabric pooled around his boots. Adrian watched helplessly. His chest burned with suppressed emotion, but he didn't speak. He didn't move. He couldn't give them anything to use against him. The birthday card slid out of the envelope. Hollister picked it up and read the words aloud mockingly. "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm finally coming home. I love you." He looked at Adrian with theatrical mock sympathy. His voice dripped with cruel sarcasm. "Aw, isn't that just precious? The criminal has a mommy who loves him." The other officers laughed obediently. The ugly sound bounced off the cold, concrete walls. Adrian's composure finally cracked. Just slightly. A visible tremor in his clenched jaw. A flicker of deep pain in his dark eyes. Hollister noticed immediately. He smiled wider. He'd finally found the weakness he was looking for. "What's wrong, boy? Miss your precious mama?" The holding room was cold and deliberately uncomfortable. Gray walls surrounded them. Gray floor stretched beneath their feet. A metal table was bolted permanently to the ground. 2 chairs sat on one side. One lonely chair on the other. Adrian sat in the single chair facing 3 officers. His wrists were red and raw from the too tight handcuffs. His shoulder throbbed painfully from Hollister's rough grip. His medals hung crooked and disheveled on his once pristine chest. He thought about his mother lying in that Virginia hospital bed, about the 72 precious hours slipping away minute by minute, about yellow roses wilting in an empty vase because her son wasn't there to bring fresh ones. The heavy door swung open with a metallic groan. Hollister walked in confidently with 2 additional officers flanking him. 4 against 1 now. The power imbalance was intentional and obvious. Classic psychological warfare tactics. Adrian recognized every element from his military training. "Stand up," Hollister ordered sharply. "Against the wall. Hands flat on the surface. Now." Adrian complied without protest. He pressed his palms firmly against the cold concrete. He spread his feet shoulder-width apart exactly. Standard search position. He'd been through this procedure before in training exercises. But this was not standard, not even close. Hollister's hands moved roughly over Adrian's uniform, pawing aggressively at the fabric, squeezing pockets hard enough to leave bruises, pulling and tugging at his hard-earned medals like they were costume jewelry. "What do we have here?" Hollister yanked Adrian's phone from his pocket with a triumphant sneer. "Evidence." "That's my personal property, sir. You need a warrant to search." "I'll decide what I need and don't need." Hollister scrolled carelessly through Adrian's phone, through his private text messages, his personal photographs, his confidential emails, private communications between a soldier and his dying mother, between a trusted subordinate and his commanding general. Hollister found the text from General Thornton and read it aloud mockingly. "Safe landing, Sergeant. Give your mother my regards." He laughed dismissively. "General, huh? Right. And I'm the President of the United States, maybe the Pope, too." He tossed the phone onto the metal table. It clattered loudly and the screen cracked from the impact. "Empty his entire bag," Hollister ordered Brennan. "I want to see everything this criminal is hiding." Brennan hesitated visibly. His face showed clear conflict. "Derek, we don't have probable cause for a full search like this. Legal could come down hard on us if—" "Did I stutter? Do what I told you." Brennan's jaw tightened with frustration, but he obeyed anyway. He upended Adrian's duffel bag completely, Contents spilled messily across the cold metal table. Uniform shirts, perfectly folded with military precision. Dress socks, rolled into neat regulation balls. A worn leather Bible with gold-edged pages and highlighted passages. Family photographs in a weathered envelope. Pictures of Adrian as a child, his parents on their wedding day, his mother holding him as a baby. The American flag came out last, small and faded from years of devoted service. Its fabric was soft from countless hours of handling by loving hands. Adrian had carried this flag through 3 separate war zones. It had covered the flag-draped casket of his best friend at Arlington National Cemetery. It had flown proudly over a schoolhouse they'd rebuilt together in Afghanistan. Hollister picked it up carelessly with just 2 fingers, like it was worthless garbage. Look at this sad thing, playing soldier with his pathetic little flag. He dropped it deliberately on the cold floor, the sacred fabric pooled around his dirty boots. Adrian watched helplessly, his heart breaking inside. His chest burned with suppressed emotion and patriotic outrage. But he stayed silent. He didn't move. He couldn't give them any excuse to escalate further. The birthday card slid out of the envelope. Hollister picked it up and read the handwritten words aloud mockingly. "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm finally coming home. I love you forever." He looked at Adrian with exaggerated theatrical mock sympathy. His voice dripped with cruel sarcasm. "Aw, isn't that just precious? The criminal has a mommy who loves him." The other officers laughed on cue. The ugly sound bounced off the concrete walls. Hollister stepped closer to Adrian. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "You think that uniform makes you special somehow? You think you're better than me because of some fancy medals?" Adrian's voice remained remarkably steady. "I think I'm an American soldier, sir, and I think I have constitutional rights." Hollister's laugh was sharp and ugly. "Rights? Out here in this room, I am your rights. I decide what happens to you, me. Not some piece of paper written 200 years ago." He stepped even closer, close enough that Adrian could smell the stale cigarettes on his breath. "You know what I think? I think your kind doesn't deserve to wear that uniform. I think you people disgrace everything it represents. I think—" "Derek." Brennan's voice was strained. "That's enough. We should process him and be done with this." Hollister ignored him completely. His focus remained locked on Adrian like a laser. "I think maybe we should teach you a lesson about respect, about knowing your proper place in the world." He grabbed Adrian by the collar and slammed him face first against the wall. Adrian's cheek scraped against the rough concrete. Blood welled from a small cut near his eye. "You feel that, boy? That's reality. That's what happens when criminals like you forget where they belong." Adrian tasted copper on his lip. His training screamed at him to fight back, to defend himself. Every instinct demanded action. But he knew better. He knew how this would end if he raised a hand. He'd seen the headlines. He'd read the stories. Another black man killed while resisting arrest. So he stayed still. He endured. He survived. "My mother is dying." His voice was quiet but steady despite everything. "I have 72 hours to see her. Please, just let me make one phone call. That's all I'm asking." Hollister pretended to consider the request. He stroked his chin thoughtfully, mockingly. "One phone call, huh?" He shrugged dramatically. "Sure. Why not? Call your mama. Tell her you're going to be late. Tell her you got caught playing dress-up again." He picked up Adrian's cracked phone and shoved it hard into his chest. "But make it quick. We've got lots of paperwork to process. Criminal charges don't file themselves." Adrian looked at the damaged phone in his hands. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, but it still powered on. He could see his own reflection in the dark glass. A soldier, a son, a man being systematically broken for sport. His thumb hovered over the contacts list. He didn't scroll down to Mom. He scrolled to General Thornton. Hollister crossed his arms smugly. He expected tears, begging. Maybe a pathetic conversation with some poor, confused elderly woman. He had absolutely no idea what was coming for him. Adrian pressed the call button firmly. Then he pressed the speaker button. The dial tone filled the small room. Ring, ring, ry, click. A voice came through the cracked speaker. Deep, commanding, authoritative. The voice of a man who had ordered troops into battle, who had briefed presidents in the Oval Office, who had 4 stars on his shoulder and the absolute authority to end military careers with a single word. Sergeant Porter, report. Hollister's confident smirk faltered visibly. Adrian spoke clearly and calmly, like he was delivering a precise battlefield status report to his commanding officer. Sir, I'm being detained by airport police at Hartsfield-Jackson International. Officers have accused me of stolen valor and criminal fraud. They've conducted an illegal search of my belongings without warrant. Applied excessive physical force. I'm currently in custody, sir. Handcuffed. Minor injuries. Dead silence on the line. Heavy. Dangerous. Ominous. Then General William R. Thornton spoke again. His voice was pure ice. Put the officer in charge on the line. Immediately. Adrian extended the phone toward Hollister. The cracked device seemed to glow with power in the gray room. Hollister didn't move. For the first time, genuine uncertainty and fear crossed his face. Take the phone, Adrian said quietly, evenly. He's waiting, and he doesn't like to wait. Hollister grabbed it reluctantly. He lifted it slowly to his ear. He tried desperately to sound authoritative and in control. This is Officer Derek Hollister, Airport Police. Who am I speaking to? The general's voice exploded through the speaker. Everyone in the room heard every single devastating word. This is General William R. Thornton, 4-star general, United States Army. The man you have in custody is Staff Sergeant Adrian Porter, my personal aide-de-camp, decorated combat veteran with 3 tours, Bronze Star recipient for valor under fire, Purple Heart holder for wounds sustained defending this nation, a hero. Hollister's face went completely pale, white as bleached bone. You have exactly 60 seconds to remove those handcuffs. Return every single one of his belongings. And pray to Almighty God I don't have your badge, your job, and your freedom before the sun sets today. Hollister stammered pathetically. Sir, there was a report. Suspicious activity. We were just following standard protocol. I don't give a damn about your protocol. The general's voice could have frozen fire solid. I care about the Bronze Star recipient you just threw against a wall. I care about the Purple Heart holder you've been calling boy. I care about my soldier who you've been treating like a criminal. He paused deliberately. The silence was absolutely deafening. Release him. Now. The words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence, final as a judge's gavel. Hollister looked at Adrian, at the soldier he'd humiliated so thoroughly, the criminal he'd openly mocked, the boy he'd shoved violently against a wall. His hand trembled uncontrollably. The phone nearly slipped from his sweaty grip. Officer Hollister. The general's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Did you hear my order? Yes, sir. Then why the hell is my soldier still in handcuffs? Brennan moved first without waiting for Hollister's permission. He stepped forward quickly and unlocked the handcuffs with shaking hands. The metal restraints fell away from Adrian's raw wrists. Angry red marks remained behind, physical proof of what had happened in this room. The general continued speaking through the phone, his voice controlled but deadly serious. Sergeant Porter, are you injured? Do you need immediate medical attention? Adrian rubbed his sore wrists slowly. He touched the cut near his eye. Minor injuries, sir. Nothing serious. I'll be fine. Like hell you will. I'm dispatching Army CID and a JAG officer to your location immediately. They'll be there within the hour. A deliberate pause. Officer Hollister? Hollister's voice was barely a whisper now. Yes, sir. Don't you dare move from that spot until my people arrive. Don't touch any evidence. Don't delete any recordings. Don't speak to anyone about what happened here. Consider that a direct order from a 4-star general of the United States Army. Another pause. Heavier than the first. And Hollister? When this is over, you're going to wish you'd never put on that badge. You're going to wish you'd chosen a different career, a different life. Because I am going to make it my personal mission to ensure you never wear a uniform of any kind ever again. The line went dead with a final click. The room fell into absolute silence. The other officers stood frozen like statues. Brennan stared at his own shoes, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Hollister looked like a man who had just watched his own funeral procession pass by. Adrian picked up his duffel bag slowly. He gathered his scattered belongings one by one with deliberate care. The uniform shirts, the photographs of his family, the worn leather Bible. He picked up the American flag from the cold floor where Hollister had dropped it. He held it for a long moment, studying the faded fabric. Then he folded it carefully, precisely, exactly the way he'd been trained at his best friend's military funeral at Arlington. 13 folds, each one meaningful, each one sacred. He picked up the birthday card. Happy birthday, Mom. I'm finally coming home. Finally, he looked directly at Hollister, the officer who had called him boy, who had mocked his medals as fake, who had kicked his flag like garbage, who had threatened his dying mother. Adrian didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't threaten revenge. He simply said 6 quiet words. Your job was to protect and serve. You did neither. Then he walked out of the holding room with his head held high. The terminal looked completely different now. Word had spread through the airport like wildfire. Travelers clustered in groups near the police substation, whispering urgently and pointing. Airport staff stood in nervous huddles. Something major had happened. Everyone sensed it. Adrian emerged from the holding room into the public space. His uniform was wrinkled and disheveled. His wrists were visibly bruised. A small cut marked his face near his eye. But his posture was perfectly straight. His eyes were clear and steady. Brennan followed behind him, carrying the duffel bag. His face was ashen gray with shame. Then came Hollister. The officer moved like a sleepwalker in a nightmare. His hand kept reaching toward his badge, touching it repeatedly, as if checking whether it was still pinned to his chest, as if he could somehow wake up from this. The elderly veteran pushed through the crowd immediately, the same man who had saluted Adrian hours earlier, who had bravely tried to intervene, who had been threatened and silenced. Now he walked directly to Adrian and extended his weathered hand. Son, I don't know exactly what happened in there, but I heard that voice through the door. He shook Adrian's hand firmly, emotionally. I heard a general defending his soldier. Thank you for your service. And thank you for showing them what real dignity looks like. Adrian nodded respectfully. Thank you for yours, sir. Vietnam? 2 tours, 68 and 70. The old soldier's eyes glistened with tears. Never thought I'd live to see one of our own treated like that. On American soil. In our own country. Neither did I, sir. Neither did I. The young black woman emerged from the crowd next, the one who had stood frozen and silent during Adrian's arrest, who had watched helplessly and done nothing. Tears streamed freely down her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I wanted to help you. I wanted to say something, but I was scared. I was so scared of what they'd do to me, too. Adrian touched her shoulder gently, kindly. Don't apologize. I understand. We all understand that fear. It's real. More people approached now, travelers who had witnessed the humiliation, who had watched a decorated soldier be dragged away like a common criminal. Their collective shame was visible on every face. Their guilt was almost palpable. "We should have done something. We're so sorry. This was wrong. This was so wrong." 45 minutes later, two black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up to the terminal entrance. Army Criminal Investigation Division. The official letters were printed in gold on the doors. 4 agents stepped out in formation. 2 men, 2 women. All business, all authority, all power. They flashed credentials at the airport security guards. "This is now a federal matter. A uniformed United States soldier was assaulted on American soil. We're assuming full jurisdiction effective immediately." Airport manager Harold Jennings came running out, nearly tripping over himself. His expensive tie was askew. Sweat beaded heavily on his reddened forehead. "Officers, please, this is airport jurisdiction. Our legal team should be present before any— Your legal team can contact Army JAG Corps at their convenience." The lead agent didn't slow down or even glance at him. "Step aside, sir. Now." Behind the CID agents walked a woman in crisp military dress uniform. Captain Sandra Mitchell, JAG Corps. She carried a leather briefcase and a thick legal pad. Her expression was professionally calm, but her eyes were sharp and deadly. She walked directly to Adrian and rendered a perfect salute. "Sergeant Porter, Captain Sandra Mitchell, JAG Corps, General Thornton personally assigned me to your case 30 minutes ago." Adrian returned the salute with precision. "Thank you, Captain." "Don't thank me yet, Sergeant." She glanced meaningfully toward where Hollister stood frozen. "We're just getting started with him, and we're going to finish it properly." The next 48 hours moved like a Category 5 hurricane through Atlanta. Army CID agents swarmed every corner of the airport. They interviewed dozens of witnesses, collected mountains of evidence, reviewed security footage that airport management had conveniently forgotten even existed. Captain Mitchell worked around the clock without sleep. She coordinated with federal prosecutors in D.C., military brass at the Pentagon, and civil rights attorneys across the country. The case was building, growing, becoming something much bigger and more significant than one isolated incident. Adrian gave his detailed statement 3 separate times, to CID investigators, to the FBI, to Mitchell herself. Each time he told the exact same story, calm, clear, completely consistent. The truth didn't need any embellishment or exaggeration. Hollister tried desperately to lawyer up. He called the police union at midnight, called his personal attorney at dawn, called everyone who had protected and shielded him for 15 years. This time, no one answered his calls. The union representative took one look at the mounting evidence and walked away without a word. The attorney returned his retainer fee by courier the next morning. Even his own colleagues and longtime friends on the force refused to vouch for his character. Kyle Brennan made a very different choice. 2 days after the incident, Brennan walked into Captain Mitchell's temporary office at the airport. He was pale and visibly shaken. His hands trembled noticeably at his sides, but his voice was steady and determined. "I want to testify. Against Hollister. I'll tell everything." Mitchell looked up from her papers, studying him carefully. "You want to testify against your own partner?" "Against Derek Hollister." Brennan sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. "He's not my partner anymore. He never should have been. I should have stopped this years ago." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small electronic device. A body camera. His personal backup unit. "Standard department cameras get automatically wiped every 72 hours, but I keep my own copies. Personal cloud storage. Everything from the last 3 years. He placed the camera carefully on Mitchell's desk. "Everything's on here. Every word Hollister said. Every action he took. Everything he did to Sergeant Porter that day. And a lot more." Mitchell picked up the camera carefully, handling it like the explosive evidence it was. "Why are you doing this, Officer Brennan? You know this will end your career too." Brennan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Because I became a cop to protect people, to serve my community, not to help destroy innocent lives. He stared at his hands in shame. I've watched Derek target black men for years. I told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself I was just doing my job, following orders. But I was wrong. I was complicit in everything. Every victim. He met Mitchell's eyes directly. Sergeant Porter served 3 combat tours overseas. He has a Bronze Star for valor, a Purple Heart for wounds. He was rushing home to see his dying mother. And Derek treated him like garbage, like he was less than human, all because of the color of his skin. Brennan shook his head slowly. I can't stay quiet anymore. Not after what I witnessed. Not after what I helped happen. The body camera footage changed everything about the case. The device had captured audio that bystanders hadn't heard. Hollister's whispered racial slurs, his threats about visiting Adrian's mother, his casual cruelty delivered in tones too low for the crowd to detect. It also captured Brennan's own attempts to intervene. His quiet suggestions to verify Adrian's credentials through proper channels. His visible discomfort throughout the encounter. His final, damning silence when he should have acted. I should have done more, Brennan told Mitchell, his voice breaking. I know that. I'll live with that guilt for the rest of my life. Mitchell nodded slowly. Your testimony will help make this right. It won't undo what happened. No, it won't. But it might prevent it from happening to someone else. Meanwhile, the media firestorm had begun and spread globally. The airport incident went viral within hours of the first leaked footage. News networks ran the story around the clock. Social media platforms exploded with outrage and calls for justice. Hashtags trended worldwide. Justice for Adrian. Protect our soldiers. Stolen valor lie. Investigative journalist Linda Morrison dug deeper than anyone else. She pulled Hollister's complete personnel file, his buried complaint history, his long pattern of abusive behavior. What she uncovered was absolutely damning. 16 formal complaints over 15 years, racial profiling, excessive force, verbal abuse, unlawful detention, intimidation. Every single complaint had been dismissed, buried, deliberately forgotten. Morrison's expose ran on national television during prime time. The complaints they buried, how one officer's history was hidden. The public reaction was volcanic. Protests formed outside Atlanta City Hall. Veterans groups demanded immediate accountability. Civil rights organizations called for comprehensive federal intervention. And in Washington, D.C., the Department of Justice took official notice. The grand jury convened in record time, faster than anyone in legal circles could remember. Public pressure had forced the system to move with unprecedented speed. Prosecutors who usually dragged their feet for months suddenly found urgent motivation. Judges who typically delayed proceedings suddenly cleared their crowded calendars. 3 weeks after the airport incident, Officer Derek Hollister was formally indicted on multiple federal charges. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law, aggravated assault and battery, false arrest, illegal search and seizure, evidence tampering. Each individual charge carried years in federal prison. Together, they represented the complete and total destruction of everything Hollister had spent 15 years building. News helicopters captured his arrest live. The dramatic footage played on every network around the world. A white police officer, handcuffed like a common criminal, being led from his comfortable suburban home. His wife watched from the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. His teenage son stood frozen on the manicured lawn, unable to process what was happening to his father. The irony was lost on absolutely no one. The trial began 6 weeks later. Federal courthouse, downtown Atlanta. The gallery was packed to maximum capacity. Veterans in full-dress uniform, civil rights activists with hand-painted signs, journalists from around the world with cameras and microphones. Adrian Porter sat in the front row. He wore his own dress uniform, freshly pressed and immaculate. His medals gleamed proudly under the courtroom lights. Beside him sat General Thornton in his four-star uniform, Captain Mitchell in her JAG Corps dress, and representatives from 3 major veterans organizations. The prosecution laid out their overwhelming case methodically and precisely. Witness after witness, evidence after evidence. The body camera footage, the security recordings, the emotional testimony of travelers who had watched a genuine American hero be systematically humiliated. Adrian took the witness stand on the 3rd day of proceedings. The courtroom fell into complete silence as he walked to the witness box. He moved with military precision and quiet dignity. His posture was perfect. His expression was calm and controlled. The prosecutor began gently. "Sergeant Porter, can you please describe for the jury the events of September 14th? Adrian spoke clearly and precisely. He recounted every detail of that day. The stop, the baseless accusations, the vicious insults, the physical violence. His voice never wavered once. His eyes never dropped. When he described Hollister kicking the American flag, the flag that had covered his best friend's casket, several jurors openly wiped tears from their eyes. The defense attorney tried aggressively to shake him during cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Sergeant, that you resisted Officer Hollister's lawful commands?" "No, ma'am. I complied fully with every single instruction given to me." "You didn't attempt to pull away when he grabbed your arm?" "I tensed instinctively, ma'am. A natural human reaction to being grabbed roughly and painfully. I did not resist in any way." "How can you be absolutely certain Officer Hollister's actions were racially motivated?" Adrian paused deliberately. He looked at the defense attorney, then at the jury, then directly at Hollister himself, sitting at the defense table in his civilian suit. "Because he called me boy, and because he said, 'You people,' repeatedly. Because he told me he'd show me how they handle my kind at his airport." Adrian's voice remained steady and strong. "Those aren't the words of an officer following legitimate protocol, ma'am. Those are the words of a man who sees my skin color before he sees my uniform, before he sees my medals, before he sees my humanity." The defense attorney had no follow-up questions. She returned to her seat in silence. Kyle Brennan testified next, visibly nervous but determined. He confirmed everything Adrian had said. He played his damning body camera footage for the jury. He answered difficult questions about Hollister's long history of racial targeting. "How many times did you personally witness Officer Hollister target black individuals without legitimate cause?" Brennan closed his eyes painfully. "I stopped counting after the 1st year, ma'am. There were too many." "And you never reported any of these incidents?" "No, ma'am." His voice broke with emotion. "And I will regret that failure for the rest of my life." General Thornton took the stand as a character witness. His 4 stars gleamed impressively on his shoulders. His commanding presence filled the entire courtroom. "Staff Sergeant Adrian Porter has served this great country with distinction for 10 years, the general declared, his voice resonating through the room. "He has received the Bronze Star for valor under enemy fire, the Purple Heart for wounds sustained in combat defending American values. He has risked his life for this nation more times than I can count." He turned to face the jury directly, making eye contact with each member. "And this is how we treat him when he comes home? This is how America honors his sacrifice? By throwing him against a wall? By calling him boy? By kicking his flag on the floor?" The general's powerful voice rose with righteous anger. "Staff Sergeant Porter was not treated as a soldier that day. He was not treated as an American citizen. He was treated as a criminal, as less than human. Why? Because of the color of his skin. And that is absolutely unacceptable. In my army, in our country, anywhere on this earth." The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes. 90 minutes to consider 16 buried complaints. 90 minutes to weigh years of systematic abuse against years of institutional silence. 90 minutes to decide whether true justice was still possible in America. The foreman stood. The courtroom held its collective breath. On the charge of deprivation of civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. Gasps, murmurs, tears, quiet sobs of relief. On the charge of assault and battery, guilty. The words kept coming. Guilty. 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 Every single count. Unanimous verdict. Judge Margaret Collins delivered the sentence 1 week later in a packed courtroom. Officer Hollister, you swore a sacred oath to protect and serve the citizens of this nation. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon of hatred. You used your authority as a tool of racial oppression. You humiliated a man who has given more to this country than you could ever comprehend. She looked at him with contempt barely concealed beneath her judicial demeanor. You are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. You are permanently banned from any law enforcement position anywhere in this country. You will pay $350,000 in restitution to Staff Sergeant Porter, and you will issue a public apology as a condition of any future parole consideration. The gavel fell with finality. The courtroom erupted in emotional applause. Adrian didn't celebrate. He sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, head slightly bowed. When eager reporters asked how he felt, he had only one answer. I feel grateful, but I also feel deeply sad, because this should never have happened, not to me, not to anyone. And it will happen again, to someone else, unless we fundamentally change the system that allowed it. The aftermath extended far beyond one man's conviction. Chief Patricia Graham resigned under mounting pressure. The Atlanta Airport Police Department underwent mandatory civil rights training. Federal oversight was imposed for 3 years. The city of Atlanta settled Adrian's civil suit for $2.1 million. He donated half to veterans organizations. The other half went directly to his mother's medical care, and the Georgia state legislature passed a landmark new law, the Porter Act. It required body cameras for all airport law enforcement officers, independent oversight for all civilian complaints, automatic investigation of any use of force incident. 16 buried complaints had finally been heard. One soldier's courage had changed an entire system. 3 months later, Adrian stood in his mother's garden in Virginia. The autumn sun was warm on his face. Birds sang cheerfully in the old oak trees. Yellow roses bloomed along the white wooden fence, the same roses his father used to plant every spring. Diane Porter had beaten the odds. The doctors called it a medical miracle. Adrian called it pure stubbornness. She was weaker now, slower in her movements, but alive and improving, still able to tend her beloved flowers, still able to hug her son. You know what I thought about? She asked, carefully pruning a rose bush with practiced hands. When I saw you on that news, being treated like that by those officers? Adrian knelt beside her in the soft grass. What, Mama? I thought about your father, God rest his soul, how he would have handled that same situation. She smiled sadly, remembering. He would have lost his temper immediately, probably gotten himself hurt badly. Or worse. She touched Adrian's cheek with her weathered hand. But you didn't. You stayed calm through everything. You stayed dignified. You made me so incredibly proud, baby. Adrian covered her hand with his own. You taught me that, Mama. You and Dad both. Don't let them take your dignity. That's the one thing they can never take unless you give it away. And you didn't give it away. Tears glistened in her eyes. You never did. 1 month later, Adrian stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. The National Civil Rights Conference had invited him to deliver the keynote address. Thousands of people filled the massive auditorium. Cameras broadcast his words to millions across the nation and around the world. General Thornton sat in the front row, Captain Mitchell beside him. veterans and activists and ordinary citizens who still believed in justice and the promise of America. Adrian looked out at the crowd, at the faces of every color, at the hope shining in their eyes. He spoke from his heart. I didn't fight overseas so I could be treated like a criminal in my own country. But I also didn't fight so I could stay silent when injustice happens to others. He gripped the podium firmly. Every American deserves to be seen for who they are, not what they look like. The uniform I wore that day should have spoken for me. But even without it, my humanity should have been enough. It should always be enough for everyone. His voice rose with conviction. This isn't just about me. It's about every black father driving home to his kids after work, every Latino worker going to his job, every person who has ever been stopped, searched, humiliated, just for existing in their own country. He paused. Let the words settle over the audience. We deserve better. We all deserve better. And we must demand it. The audience rose as one. The applause thundered. It lasted 3 full minutes. General Thornton stood with them, clapping, his eyes bright with unmistakable pride. Adrian Porter had entered that airport as a soldier. He walked out as something far greater, a symbol, a voice, a reminder that dignity cannot be stolen, only surrendered. And he had refused to surrender. In the months that followed, Adrian was promoted to Sergeant First Class. He was invited to speak at West Point about integrity, courage, and justice. He established a scholarship fund for children of fallen veterans. Kyle Brennan left the Atlanta Police Department forever. He joined a nonprofit organization dedicated to police accountability and reform. He traveled the country with Adrian, speaking at training seminars, sharing his painful story of complicity and eventual redemption. I stayed silent for too long, Brennan would tell audiences. Don't make my mistake. Speak up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The Porter Act became a model for other states across America. Body camera requirements, independent oversight, accountability measures. Slowly, painfully, the system began to change. Not enough. Never enough. But a beginning. And in a federal prison cell, Derek Hollister had 8 long years to think about the man he'd called boy. The soldier he'd humiliated. The hero whose dignity he couldn't break no matter how hard he tried. 8 years to ask himself, what if I had just treated him like a human being? But some lessons come far too late. Now, I want to ask you something important. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you think differently, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. And drop a comment below. What would you have done in Adrian's shoes? Would you have stayed calm? Would you have fought back? I genuinely want to know. Because here's the truth about power. Those who abuse it always believe they're untouchable. They believe their badge, their position, their privilege will protect them forever. Until it doesn't. Until one phone call changes everything. But here's the question we all need to answer together. Officer Derek Hollister had 16 complaints against him. 16 separate incidents, and none of them were ever properly investigated. It took a 4-star general to finally stop him. But what about everyone else? What happens when there is no general to call? That's the question. Not someday. Right now. What are you going to do about it?